Football. It's a man's game. Everyone knows that. Yet the most influential commentator in the game happens to be a woman. She is Chief Football Writer of The Age, a panellist on 2 television programs and a fixture twice weekly on Radio 3AW. Welcome, Caroline Wilson.
Thanks for having me, Mike, but I have to pick you up on that. It's not a man's game.
I know. It just suited the intro, that's all.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
This is the most inclusive football code in the world. And we live in a unique city and in a unique country in that way, I think, with our national game. And it's a cliche, and the AFL bring it out far too often to suit their own needs. But most audiences are made up of almost 50% of women, and that was how it was for me growing up.
Okay. Now, there's no question you've been a trailblazer for women, and particularly for women who are interested in sports journalism. And you've got to you admit that. Yeah,
look, obviously I never planned on it. I didn't set out for that to happen. I never quite believed that would be the role that you'd be describing to me right now. But I suppose so. I hope that it's made more women sit up and think that they can take on key roles in the game. I hope eventually it resonates all the way to head office at AFL headquarters, because I think they're the ones that are dragging the chain a bit there where women are concerned.
But there are women on the commission, and there are women now in football club boards.
There are. I don't think there are enough women in positions of power at AFL House, so not enough having a big say, not enough executives, and I think that the AFL has to take a far stronger role there. I think there are signs of it, certainly.
In terms of sports journalism, have you smashed the glass ceiling, or is it just scratched?
Oh, I think in terms of journalism, I don't think the media has ever really been as sexist as many other institutions around this country. I mean, certainly at The Age, we have a woman sports editor, Chloe Salto, who used to be the chief cricket writer, Samantha Lane, Emma Quayle, 2 other very senior journos in our panel there at The Age. So I think the glass ceiling in journalistic terms has been smashed.
Does gender still get used against the female practitioners in this business?
Look, I think if it does, it's subtle. I've always refused to use it as an excuse for me. A lot of people tell me at particular times during my career where I've been really under the, in the gun and under a lot of pressure, that they say this is partly because of your gender and people just don't like you being there. I think I have very strong opinions, and I can, really be very harsh on people at times, and so I can't really expect to play the gender card back, can I?
No, that's true, and you can be harsh. You'd say harsh but fair. Do you follow social media?
No, I don't. Because I just... I think journos who spend too much time reading fan websites and club websites and what people are saying about them on Twitter and on Facebook, I just think they become too self-obsessed. And I do think there are people in this industry who honestly think they're finding the cure for cancer, when all we are doing is a wonderful job covering the greatest game in the world.
We go back a long way, don't we?
We do.
You started at the Herald in the late 70s?
Yes, 1978.
Yeah.
And I think I met you as an 18-year-old in 1979.
Yeah. And I knew you'd make it. You had the pedigree. Your father had been president of the Richmond Footy Club. You grew up in the Richmond fraternity. You were hungry, you had a nose for news, and you were tough.
Yeah, I don't know if I was that tough back then. I was certainly terrified going into the Herald Sports Department for the first time. As a 21-year-old, I think I'd done my cadetship. I was just finishing it by then. I idolised you. I just absolutely...
Really? You kept that a secret?
I don't anymore, so be careful, all right? It could be a long night.
Yeah, no, I think it's intriguing when I was thinking about confronting you, because we're genuine friends. I think that nose for news is the fundamental to what we do. One of your other great traits is that you are beguiling. I like that word. You can fall out with people, and you have in this business, and you're able to win them back.
Well, that's nice of you to say that. Even though I don't idolise you anymore, I still admire you, Mike. Look, I like you, I barracked for the story, and I always have. I love football, but I love journalism far more. You once told me as a teenager that really you just had to be on the back page, and that was all you should really aim for, and it was great advice. When you say I'm beguiling, I don't... And I get a bit annoyed sometimes and you've said it to me, and it has irritated me that I've, flutter my eyelashes at some coach or CEO, and which is just ridiculous.
Okay,
and you shouldn't have said it, but...
Let me cite you the example of Dennis Pagan. Now, you've had a roller coaster ride with Dennis, the former North Melbourne coach. Now, this is a bloke who said of you, correct me if I'm wrong, did Dennis not say to you at one point, with that caustic tongue of his, that you can't distinguish between a Sherrin and an Easter egg? Did he say that?
Something along those lines, and just because your old man used to carry Francis Burke's bags, don't think you know anything about football, which was just highly insulting both to my father and to me. No, it made me angry. What a stupid thing to say. I mean, if it was something that was true, that's the stuff that cuts you to the quick, doesn't it? But it was just ridiculous. It was almost cartoonish. And look, I really like Dennis. I think he's got a great gift with the gab. In the end, I think we had a pretty good relationship. He did give me a couple of spells, and yes, he did occasionally cut them short. But I find this with most people in footy, and clearly there are some examples I'm sure you'll ask me about. But if you're right, and I think in most cases about people I have been very much right, then they do sort of respect you and come back to you. And if they know that you're going to keep writing stuff, I think they should come back to you because they should respect your job and what you're doing. And what you're doing is trying to take people they can't normally go in football to places that they would like to go.
What about your standoff with Andrew Demetriou? I mean, Andrew used to brag to me that how he just kept not taking your calls for an extended period.
Yeah, I think that was for a couple of months. And again, it was over something that I thought was fairly trifling. And again, this is someone who I had a long, and I'm sure Andrew would say too, ultimately very good relationship with. I took him to task at times and he deserved it. I reckon a couple of times I might have been too easy on him. But it was a line in a story the day the Ricky Nixon story had broke with the so-called wrongly named St Kilda schoolgirl. And I talked about the fact that the AFL had been trying to manage the story about Ricky Nixon. But what I think cut Andrew more deeply was the fact that I was very critical of people in power at the AFL who knew Ricky Nixon and had been friendly with Ricky Nixon and had seen him going in this downward spiral within his personal life with all the stuff he was doing, you know, alcohol, drugs, etc. And nobody stepped in. And yet he was one of the most influential still player managers in the game, looking after some of the game's biggest names. And Andrew didn't like that. He completely denied trying to manage the story, but I think a few of them should have felt guilty about what happened with Ricky Nixon. So, yeah, he didn't take my calls for a couple of months.
You've taken on the big names. We've talked about Pagan and Demetriou, and there's been Maguire and Kennett and Malthouse. Any fallout?
Deservedly so.
Well, that's a subjective assessment, isn't it? I mean, they got angry, so therefore they wouldn't think it was deservedly so.
No, but I think that if we all look back now, the majority of people would say that I'd been fair. I mean, you don't take on people like that without checking your facts and without having a very strong opinion. And there are a couple of things that Mick Malthouse has done over the journey, and Jeff Kennett, and who was the other? Oh, Eddie Maguire. They deserve to be taken to task. I mean, Eddie has been a great president for Collingwood, but there was a period of about a year there, or maybe two, that I think he lost his way, and I've told him that, and he deserved it. So, but all of those people now I talk to, and we have, maybe Mick Malthouse. I haven't spoken to him for a while. But, you know, he deserves to be taken to task, and I don't regret that.
When you sit down at the computer or the laptop, do you ever worry when the words are coming through the fingers and onto the screen? Do you ever toss up whether you're going too hard and whether there'll be fallout, or you're always convinced?
Mike, every week of my entire life. And I often say this to younger journos. If you take on a story, and it mightn't necessarily be a column, an opinion column, but any form of story, the ones that make you feel sick to the pit of your stomach are the best stories. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true. So you just have to learn to live with that feeling, because it never goes away. It doesn't matter how old you are, and I'm in my mid-50s now. It never goes away, and the day it does, I guess I'll stop writing.
Has the job brought you to tears? I don't mean that might come across as a sexist question because you're female, but has it brought you to tears at any time? A couple of nights after Sam Newman dressed me up as a mannequin, that made me cry. And I know you never really understood that. Well, how do you know that?
Well, because we've argued about it, and I've told you I didn't think you were particularly supportive of me during that time. You didn't see what all the fuss was about. And so I didn't want to turn the tables back on you, but a lot of people took your view. I was particularly hurt, I think, by you because we were such good friends, and I felt that if something had upset me that much, I felt that maybe you should have understood that. And in your very senior role as the most senior footy journo in the country, I felt a bit let down. I've got to be honest with you.
I wouldn't have asked this question if I'd known what the answer was.
Well, I think I've told you this privately.
So what? Refresh me. What was my stance on that?
You just said to me a couple of times, and you said it a couple of times on radio, and if you remember, it became a bit of a national scandal because of the ensuing fallout between Channel 9's The Footy Show and a lot of senior women in the game who had taken a stand, which was terrible the way they were treated. And I remember you saying a couple of times you just couldn't really see quite what all the fuss was about what Sam had done. And I know Sam's a friend of yours as well, so maybe it was difficult. But I just felt so humiliated that night. And I remember...
You said that night. Let's go back to that night. Were you at home? Were you watching the footy show?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah?
I was.
So you're at home with Brendan and the kids?
No. Brendan, I don't know where he was. I think he might have been away working on a state political story interstate or overseas. I can't quite remember. But my eldest daughter, Rose, was 17 and my 15-year-old son, Ned, and I don't think my youngest was watching. I don't think Clementine was there. But we were watching the show and we just all sort of sat there stunned, absolutely stunned. And if you remember, I was working at Channel 9 then, as I am now. And we all sort of sat there stunned, and then the phone started almost, rebounding off the, coffee table with text messages from friends just absolutely disgusted and really upset for me. And I think for a couple of days I was in shock, but I think it was a Friday night. I remember I was meant to be going to a party and I pulled out. I didn't want to go out. And I sat again on the sofa in front of the fire and I just started crying, and I still can't believe that it made me that upset.
So what specifically offended you most about that?
I just felt so humiliated.
Was it the
groping? It was just, having my photograph sort of staple gun to a mannequin and people in sort of underwear and all these blokes sort of sitting around laughing. I think if I had to put it in those... it must be said that, some of the people involved, notably Gary Lyon and Luke Tunnicliffe and Tim Cleary, who were in front of the camera, behind the camera people who were involved in that show, they were incredibly regretful and apologetic.
Did you address it with Sam?
Well, Sam was told to address it with me. Sam and I are fine now. One thing about me, I think, and I think this is magnified by the entire industry, I think we're a pretty forgiving industry. And I don't have a long memory like a lot of people. But Sam rang me on the Saturday. He tried to ring me from Friday night. I wouldn't take his calls. And when I finally did take his call on the Saturday, he said, if you quit this job, if you quit Channel 9 because of what's happened in your week. And I just thought, well, Sam, I don't think you really quite understand how hurt I am. So the conversation didn't really continue from there, and we didn't speak for quite some time.
The story of recent years is the James Hird story at Essendon. Now, you're entitled to feel totally vindicated on your stand on Essendon and Hird. Let's go back to the start. You are seen in certain quarters to have been conducting a vendetta against Hird.
Yep.
You're married to Brendan Donahue, is an Essendon tragic, and had Hirdy as a hero. Take me through the pillow talk early on.
Oh, that's very personal. Look, only once in the first month or two after that story broke, and it must be said that Brendan also barracks for the story, being a journalist, and a very good one, and not being biased there. He's a brilliant journalist, my husband, but he could see that something was very rotten in the state of Windy Hill from the word go. But he did say to me once, and I don't think it was over pillows, but I think it might have been in the kitchen, he did say to me once, are you sure you're not going too hard on James? Are you sure you're right about this?
To which you said?
I said, yes, I am. I mean, I know people use the word vendetta and witch hunt. I just think that is so insulting and so inaccurate.
I understand that, but I'm
you're
talking
right,
about the perception.
People did say that, they did. You don't take on James Hird and his role in a drug scandal without doing your research. people, love to use a convenient line that, the AFL was leaking me stories, and it just was ridiculously not true. I was talking to parents of players. I was talking to other people who worked in that footy department. I was talking to lawyers and player managers and, yes, occasionally the AFL. And it was quite clear to me that James, while I don't think he knew that the players were taking what turned out to be performance-enhancing or banned drugs, but I do think that he sanctioned that program. I'd seen through some very good investigative journalism at my own newspaper.
Baker and Mackenzie.
Yeah, Nick Mackenzie and Richard Baker, that I saw what he'd said in the text messages. I mean, he was in it up to his ears. And not only that, but the minute that all kicked in, so did the self-preservation. And the selfishness
Caroline, you
upset
said,
me more than anyone else.
But you said 30 seconds ago you don't believe he thought they were taking anything that was a prohibited substance. Did you not say that?
Yes.
OK, if that's the case, what has he done wrong?
These are... As a father of boys and as the mother of a boy, it still makes me sick to my stomach that a football club and their head coach knew that these guys were being taken off site and injected, some of them twice a week, in their stomach for 4 months. He denies that there was experimentation. It has been found to have been experimentation. Ziggy Switkowski said it in his report. They were sending off placebo. They were doing blood tests comparing bodies with bodies, sending stuff off to factories. It was absolutely disgraceful. No, but you can't just gloss over this.
No, I'm not glossing over it. But
the illegal side of it is just, to me, it's turned out to be a major story. To me, it was always the welfare story and the failure of that coach and that football club to look after those young men who had been sent there trustingly by parents. I mean, the older players, I sort of think they maybe should have taken a bigger stand and they knew what they were doing. But there were 19-year-olds, Mike.
Yep.
It's still the most shameful story that has happened in AFL football.
OK. You did, and you covered, you were brave and you were committed and you were consistent with that story. Are you disappointed that you wrote the story on the website at The Age in late 2014 that Heard was to be sacked and he wasn't sacked?
I'm disappointed. Yeah. Of course I'm disappointed. You're always disappointed when you make a mistake. Always. And that was a mammoth mistake. I mean, it was...
But was it right at the time? Was it? Do your understanding now, looking back, were you correct when you said that James Heard is about to be sacked by the Essendon football? You were correct.
But
so they backed off it.
But I should have used used the words "is facing the sack," "is about to be sacked." I think I said he'd been terminated or he'd been removed. Yep. Now that decision had been made. You know me well enough to know I wouldn't write something so big and momentous without knowing that to be the case. It all changed during the time that my story was online, and I shouldn't have done it. I made a mistake. I apologised on radio, television and in a column in the newspaper. I couldn't have been more sorry. And yes, it's true that, it was right at the time, but that doesn't make it right. I
want to take you, not literally, but back in time to Como Park, and you're walking your dog. And there's another dog comes from the opposite direction.
Why I ever told anyone this story, I do not know.
Well, take us through it.
Oh, look, it was late in 2013. I think it was the footy season had ended. James Heard had been suspended for a year by the AFL. Essendon had been fined $2 million and lost draft picks, etc. And I was meeting a girlfriend, as I do most weeks, down at Como Park. And my beautiful brown Labrador started playing with a golden Labrador, and my girlfriend was late. Still annoyed at her about that.
You deserve
that. And the Labradors are playing, and I notice a blonde bloke and his blonde young son running up the hill at Como Park, and I'm calling my dog, and I realise the blonde bloke is James Heard. And
what was the exchange?
There wasn't an exchange.
Nothing. No words exchanged.
No.
No eye contact.
No, James didn't. I looked at him. He didn't look me in the eye. He just kept running. Thank heavens I extricated my dog from his dog, and they kept running. And my girlfriend turned up, and they went back down the hill, and I wasn't going to change my, where I walk, so we never saw each other again. How
did you handle the email from one of Heardy's daughters, I think Stephanie? Sent you an email?
His only daughter.
His only daughter, yeah.
Yeah, I did tell you about that one, so I don't want to go into that in too much detail, because Stephanie, when she wrote that, was an adolescent. She was sticking up for her father. She was insistent that she hadn't been put up to it by her parents. And she just wanted to tell me, ask me a couple of things. The thing I think I can say is that she was very concerned. She heard that I was writing a book about her father, and she asked me not to write the book. And when I responded to her email, there was a lot of other stuff in there too that I won't go into, but I just said, look, it's not true. I'm not writing a book. There's a lot of misinformation around, and I congratulated on her for supporting her father.
Can you foresee James Hird ever returning to the AFL in any capacity?
Look, I can't. And I know, as I said before, we're a very forgiving industry, but I think it'd be very hard to take him seriously at the moment, and a lot of water's going to have to go under the bridge for that to happen.
This is a question, it's a rhetorical question. I think you owe James Brayshaw an apology.
Do you?
Yeah. I think you actually went after James Brayshaw and were harshly critical of him about not taking his football club to Queensland, and among other things. And you even suggested at one point that Sam Kekovich should take his place. Now, North Melbourne's situation at the moment has got to be deemed to be healthy, does it not?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. I might have done something with North Melbourne in recent days where I've said that James Brayshaw's regime's been very successful. And I take you up on one point. I never said he should have taken the club to Queensland. Once he took on the job, I was totally supportive of them staying in Melbourne. When I went after him was because I felt there was so many factions and so much carnage and bloodshed after that whole episode that I thought he took far too long, and he still hasn't unified all those factions. He didn't see that as his role. I've come to realise that James is never going to be the sort of president, and I didn't want him to be Eddie Maguire, but I think that there was enormous dissatisfaction internally at his failure to sell the club publicly, to be there, to glad hand, to be the front man.
So you don't think you were harsh on James Brayshaw?
I think that I'm not going to apologise to him. I certainly think that he, over the journey, you'd have to give him a very big tick. You'd have to give him a very big tick, and this isn't the first time I've said that. But there was a period where I thought he did really fail to show leadership when they needed it.
Caroline, you've been chief football writer of The Age since 1999. I want to take you back 10 years before that. Grand final day 1989. You were working for the Sunday Age. We both were. There was a story the Sunday Age had about Gary Ablett Sr. and some trouble with the police. Is that right?
Yeah, about time he might have spent in prison,
jail.
And police charges.
Okay,
yeah.
So Gary Ablett's lost the match, and won the Norm Smith medal. And this girlie from The Age, as Alan Jeans used to like to describe you, has turned up and asked him about his trouble in his time in prison.
Yeah,
pretty tough.
Heavily pregnant girlie, as I remember at the time too. Look.
How did you broach that with him?
It was the only opportunity I was going to get to ask the question. And what I can't stand is when people write stories and they don't actually, go and ask the person who they're writing about. And we were doing a big piece during that final series and subsequently on Gary Ablett, warts and all. And as you remember, the enigma exists to this day, but it was massive at the time. And I didn't only ask him about that. I mean, obviously I know your style.
You were some well played, Gaz.
It was one of the greatest games we've ever seen played. I mean, I did obviously talk about all of that for The Age the next day, but during the interview, and obviously about the Norm Smith medal and the devastation of losing a game that clearly they maybe should have won, one of the greatest. We knew even then, didn't we? We'd seen one of the great games.
And you just said, Gary, just before I go,
I asked him about. Being charged by police, and asked him how much time he'd actually spent in prison.
To which he said?
He said, I'm not going to talk about that. And then he rubbed my heavily pregnant stomach and asked me if he would like me to bless the unborn child.
Really? That's one story you didn't tell me.
It's fairly unusual. I mean, I think I just want to say this, all these exchanges, I think, fascinate people partly because male and female, not so much now because so many women cover the game, but to this day it continues. The fallout with James Hird, the enmity or whatever you want to call it with James Brayshaw, people sort of see me as having some sort of female hatred or dislike, and it's always comes down to personalities. In the end, you're just doing your job, and being male or female doesn't really come into it. I think that's the only time when the sexist card can be played by me, where people sort of get too obsessed by the relationships and, people are always saying to me, some horrible person said to me once, "Oh, did James Hird knock your back once?" I mean, that's the sort of comment that...
I shouldn't laugh at that.
You know, you shouldn't.
No,
I mean,
sorry, I take it back.
I mean, that sort of stuff just staggers me, that, you know, people would still think that way. That's where I think we still have a long way to go.
Why didn't you go to the Herald Sun when the chief football writer's role was vacant?
After you left?
Yeah.
Well, it was a tempting offer, and it was put to me that, you know, this was going to be a major role, obviously, not only with the paper, but also at Fox Footy and a couple of other things. I really love The Age in the end.
So that's what it was. It wasn't not economics. It was just purely that
The Age made a pretty compelling case for me to stay, and they made it clear that they really wanted me to stay. But in the end, the one thing I love about Melbourne, and I hope this isn't too parochial, is that we're a two-newspaper town. And it concerns me. I love... The Herald Sun's a great paper. You know, at times there are things, you know, they write that we've talked about that can be a bit hurtful, but there are two great newspapers in this town. Yes, both diminished to varying degrees, but it worries me that I sometimes feel that News Limited doesn't want this to be a two-newspaper town, that they would prefer to control all the news media in this city. And that's one of the things that makes Melbourne and Sydney great cities.
Okay,
I think we need the two newspapers.
I think Fairfax, I'm not sure Fairfax wants two newspapers in this town. They clearly seem to be downgrading The Age. I don't believe The Age will be getting that in hard copy form Monday to Friday within 3 years.
Look, I hope you're wrong, but there's a lot of evidence to support that.
I mean, your circulation's under 100,000 a day.
In terms of newspapers, yeah, not in terms of online.
No, but I'm talking about the news. I love newspapers, the hard copy, as you do.
So do I,
yeah.
So do I. Yes, it's a terrible time for newspapers, and it's not a great time for The Age. But I love The Age, and I believe that there are enough good people still there, and I have faith that whatever form it takes over the next few years, that there will always be an Age masthead that has a major say in what goes on in Melbourne.
What's your favourite medium?
Newspapers.
Yeah?
Yeah, newspapers. I mean, it's very nice of you to have me on this show. I feel very flattered, but I don't think TV is something I'm absolutely brilliant at. But there's nothing like going into a newspaper, knowing you've got a great yarn, and picking up the paper, or these days, you know, clicking online and seeing a big story that you know is going to make a difference and maybe set the agenda, maybe upset a few people, but that is going to change something in this very small but important world in which we live.
Despite the fact that you've insulted me 3 times today, you know what I think of you as a journalist. I say that publicly all the time. I mean, if I were starting a newspaper, you'd be the first person I'd hire. You've actually done a great service to women who want to be journalists, and may it long continue.
Well, thanks for all the help you've given me along the way. I really appreciate it.
This has been a Fox Footy production, part of the Fox Sports Network.
Is there one thing that you've done that gives you sits in an exalted place in your reflection?
I think, and I wish I'd thought harder before this, because I'll probably walk away and think of things I should have said. But I think that I really tried to open up stories about footballers and some of their private issues and other people in football and stuff going on behind the scenes a bit more strongly and a bit earlier than a lot of people. I hesitate to use the word, find the word trailblazer a bit. But I mean, the story, the first big story I did as The Age chief football writer, remember you told me they shouldn't have given me that title?
No, is this... You're whacking me. This is the third time. I'm not sure I said that, did I?
No, you
did. Said, well, you know what I said to you?
You said they shouldn't have given you the title. When you got that position,
you and our friendship will be under strain as a result of that.
Yep. Yeah, and it was. No, you did once say to me that you felt it was putting too much pressure on me to give me the title of chief footy writer. Sounding like I'm coming out with all these old scores to settle, aren't I? No, but I remember for 6 months trying to get Ken Hunter to talk to me, and therefore to Carlton fans and young men around Australia, really, about his battle with depression and the mental illness he suffered after he was dropped for the first time at the age of 30. And I was really proud of that story. And I don't know why I'm singling that one out, because I've written bigger stories and I think broken bigger stories that had more of an impact on the game. But I remember it was just such a long lead-in time, and winning Ken's trust and getting to know him and his wife Mandy and what wonderful people they were. And it was one of my happiest moments. We've talked about a couple of low points, but the day after that story was published, that he rang me and he thanked me and he said that a monkey was off his back.
Good.
And to this day, I think Ken still talks to groups of young men about mental illness, about depression, about alienation.
And that's important.
Isolation. And it was one of the only times I've ever let someone actually read the story before it went in the paper.
Do you beat yourself up when you get it wrong? And you've got some wrong. We all have. And if you do beat yourself up, is there a period, is there days, weeks, or not before you move on?
I beat myself up when I get it wrong, but I equally and just as often beat myself up when I don't write a story that I should have written. And that doesn't happen very often. A colleague, or former colleague now, Jake Nile, always says to me that, you know, I tend to jump early and he tends to be more deliberate and jump late, and if only we could find the middle ground. But there are a couple of times I should have written things as soon as I knew about them, and I didn't. And I beat myself up over that because I think my first loyalty is really to the people who buy The Age and listen to 3AW and watch Footy Classified, and I hate it when I don't do things. What's
the biggest issue facing the AFL, do you think? Now, it can be on. I know your province is the off-the-field stuff in the boardrooms, but take it across the board. I mean, what do you think the biggest concern for Gillon McLachlan's administration is at the moment? Well,
I'll probably say that I'll give you one on the field and one off the field. As Mike Fitzpatrick said to the coaches when they had dinner a year or two ago, stoppages and that entire sort of way the game's being played now is killing the game.
Killing the game.
That's what Mike Fitzpatrick said. Now, if the chairman continues to have such misgivings about the hold-ups in the game that he thinks it's killing the game, then that is a massive issue for the AFL. Having said that, I don't actually share that opinion quite as strongly as others, and I still think that the biggest problem facing the AFL is the plight of its clubs.
How many?
Oh, well, half.
Half of them?
I reckon half. And, you know, Greater Western Sydney is a massive problem. The Gold Coast is a massive problem.
They could both play finals this year, you know.
Well, I really hope they do. I don't quite know where they're going to take the cup if GWS ever win it. I mean, will they take it down take it to Homebush?
That's a good question,
take it down the main street of Bankstown? I mean, I think I can't understand why Greater Western Sydney, as we sit here tonight, doesn't have a general manager of footy operations or a list manager, and they're not rushing to make that a priority right now. Maybe they are. I'm not seeing signs of it right at this very minute. The Gold Coast clearly have cultural problems that we didn't really see in the first couple of years when we should have. And obviously we've got other clubs that have terrible financial problems. So I probably think, I mean, it might sound a bit glib and a bit dull, but I think that is a bigger problem because when those clubs are strong, I think strong clubs will fight off soccer. I really think that. Okay. And I still love going to the footy. I don't get that frustrated by what I see on the football field.
So how often do you go to the footy?
Well, every week.
You do?
Yeah.
You attend a game. You work at AW, pre-match on Saturdays?
Yeah, I'd probably attend one game every weekend, sometimes two.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't like sitting in the press box, and I don't have to because I'm not actually covering games. So I'd sit in the members of the MCG every week.
I want to ask you about Gary Lyon. You were very sympathetic to Gary in a piece in a column you wrote in The Age recently.
I don't think I was very sympathetic.
Yeah, you were.
I dispute that, but go on.
Well, I mean, did you feel a sense of belonging to Gary and needing to defend him because he'd been so supportive of you in your TV career?
No, certainly not because he'd been supportive of me in my TV career. The Age wanted me to write a piece. Obviously, I had to take a position on what had happened. I'd just come back from a nice long holiday, and I needed a couple of days to get it clear in my head what had actually happened and how I felt about it. In the end, the easiest and I felt the strongest piece for me to write, which I could write without fear or favour, was the Gary Lyon I knew. Mm-hmm. Now, if that came out as though I was defending him, I was simply talking about the Gary that was on the show with me who I worked with. I wasn't always complimentary about him, and I certainly didn't gild the lily about what he'd done. I made it quite clear that what he'd done was most unfortunate, and that he shouldn't have done it. But if it came across as sympathetic, and the inevitable Wayne Carey comparison comes up again, most people felt it was a good column. Some people said, why was I so tough on Carey and not equally tough on Gary? Was it because I worked with Gary? Now, that's an obvious conclusion, but I refuse to compare, as important as the sports media is, Channel 9 and Triple M to the North Melbourne Football Club, a club with members who'd supported that club for decades, paying members who often, gave money they couldn't really afford to be members, a football club that was paying their champion captain well over the odds from what they could afford. I'm not going to compare what Wayne did to what Gary did.
Okay.
I think it's completely different.
Do you follow social media?
No, I don't. Because I just... I think journos who spend too much time reading fan websites and club websites and what people are saying about them on Twitter and on Facebook, I just think they become too self-obsessed. And I do think there are people in this industry who honestly think they're finding the cure for cancer, when all we are doing is a wonderful job covering the greatest game in the world. I really mean that. And at the height of the Essendon drug scandal, my youngest daughter had a particularly nasty social media attack, which put me off it even more. So no social media for me.
So no Facebook? No. Do you tweet?
No.
No, you don't?
No,
Okay.
but people, there's a few tweeting in my name who are apparently very funny and frighteningly accurate.
So it's not you.
It's not me.
Caroline, your organisational skills are fair to poor. How do you manage all the things that are in your life? You're a high-profile media practitioner, a wife, a mother of 3 kids, you're in a book club, you're a movie buff, you love having dinner parties, and you never wear a watch. Is that why you're always late, is it?
I was on time today. I don't do anything perfectly, clearly. I've always felt that I could have been maybe I would have been a better mother if I hadn't worked full time. I would have been a better journalist if I hadn't been a mother. But having said all of that, I think that people can only do these things if they have fantastic help around them. I've got incredibly supportive, obviously a very supportive husband who is also a journalist and a very, equal great parent. My mother, Julia, who has just been an invaluable help during all of that time. The age, I've got to say, have been very understanding over the years. Never complained when I left to go and do the school pickup.
Can you foresee James Stewart ever returning to the AFL in any capacity?
Look, I can't. And I know, as I said before, we're a very forgiving industry, and I know people bring up the Wayne Carey example time and time again. But I think Wayne's fall was not nearly as big as James's. I mean, Wayne was a champion, probably the greatest player. I think he's your all-time favourite. But Wayne was never seen in a hallowed light in terms of his social behaviour as a human being. He already had priors when the Kelly Stevens scandal broke, and worse stuff that followed. But James was up there. He's my favourite player. Yeah. He's the most beautiful player I've ever seen.
He was or is your favourite player?
Oh, well, he doesn't play anymore. When he was playing, he was. And I would say, in the time I've covered footy, he's the greatest I've ever seen. And, and he was so brave as well, so to go with the tenacity, the bravery and, that sort of grace-like way and that he was able to move the ball, the graceful way he played, along with the bravery, I'd never seen anything like that. But I think the fall was so great, and the fact that he still doesn't understand what he's done wrong. He still blames everyone else. He still blames the AFL. He still blames people at Essendon. He's still pointing the finger at his old president and former close friend David Evans. He still blames the media.
There's been some casualties, haven't there?
There have been, but he's the greatest. And the one role I think he could come back to, he'll never coach again. Coaching was an abysmal failure for him. Not only, through his fault. They gave him the keys when he was completely inexperienced, and they shouldn't have done that. I don't
agree with you about, in the pure terms about his ability to coach a footy team. I don't think it was an abysmal failure there. They had some great wins under James Hurt. Mike,
the whole package.
Yeah, but
he oversaw as a coach the most catastrophic period.
That's a different
issue,
in that
club's history.
Yeah.
If you're talking about coaching as sitting in the box
sense.
every week.
Yeah.
I'm talking about coaching's much bigger than that now.
Okay.
It's so much bigger than that now. Okay. The only way I think he could come back is maybe in the media. Maybe he'll come back to the couch. Who knows? But I think it'd be very hard to take him seriously at the moment, and a lot of water's going to have to go under the bridge for that to happen.